In the winter of 2021, 3 men climbed toward the summit of the most dangerous mountain on Earth. One was a national hero, attempting to claim glory for his country. Another was a perfectionist, chasing redemption after a humiliating failure. The third was an idealist, bound by principles so strict they would cost him his life. Within hours of approaching the summit, all 3 vanished. This is the story of obsession, ambition, and the deadliest climb, for which they paid with their lives. K2 stands at 8,611 meters in the Karakoram range of Pakistan. It's the second highest peak in the world, but deadlier than Everest. For every 4 climbers who attempt K2, the mountain collects 1 life. In winter, the odds grow even worse. Winds roar at hurricane force. Temperatures plunge to minus 50 degrees Celsius, and the air is so thin, your body begins to die with every breath. For decades, K2 in winter remained unconquered, the last great prize of mountaineering. By December 2020, that was about to change. Nearly 60 climbers gathered at base camp that season. Among them were 3 men who would form an unlikely team. Muhammad Ali Sadpara was a legend in Pakistan. Born in a remote village where 8 of his 11 siblings died in childhood, he had risen from poverty to become the father of modern Pakistani mountaineering. But his path to greatness began in the humblest way imaginable. Ali Sadpara started as a low-altitude porter, hauling gear across the Baltoro Glacier in cast-off equipment and flip-flops on one of the most unforgiving glaciers on Earth. His mother breastfed him until he was 6 years old, a fact he openly shared, saying it made him strong. From that foundation of poverty and resilience, he climbed his way to legend. At 45, he was humble, charismatic, and driven by a singular obsession to plant Pakistan's flag on every high peak in the world. Snorri was Iceland's greatest climber, a father of 6. He'd summited K2 once before, in summer. Now, this was his second attempt at a winter ascent. His first attempt in 2020 had ended in failure, and something far worse than failure: bad blood. Snorri had co-led that expedition with a Nepali climber named Mingma. The attempt failed, and when both men returned to base camp in December 2020, sources described their meeting as an awkward situation. There was tension, there was history, and now Mingma was back as the co-leader of the rival all-Nepali team. This time, Snorri was in charge of his own expedition. He'd hired Ali Sadpara and his 21-year-old son, Sajid, to help him succeed. And the last person on the team was Juan Pablo Mohr, an architect from Chile. He was also a purist. His goal was to climb all 14 8,000-meter peaks without supplemental oxygen and without Sherpa support. He'd even set a Guinness World Record, summiting Everest and Lhotse back-to-back in just 6 days, without oxygen or support. But he wasn't supposed to be on this team. He'd arrived with his own partner, Sergi Mingote, but Sergi fell to his death while descending from Camp 1 to Advanced Base Camp. But Mingote wasn't just a partner. In Juan's own words, "For me, Sergi was a mentor. He was like a father, a best friend." Devastated, grief-stricken, and operating on what can only be described as a fatalistic vow, Juan decided to continue. He joined Snorri and the Sadparas. 3 men, 3 motivations, 1 mountain, and 1 problem. None of them would be the first. On January 10th, 2021, a violent storm ripped across K2. Winds tore through Camp 2, scattering tents, oxygen bottles, and critical gear across the slopes. It was a crushing logistical and psychological blow, forcing every team to resupply and reevaluate their plans. 5 days later, the mountain presented a choice. Snorri's forecast showed only more storms, so they stayed put. But the Nepali teams trusted a different report, one that predicted a brief window of calm. They seized it. On January 16th, a 10-man, all-Nepali team, led by Mingma, Snorri's former partner and rival, completed the historic first winter ascent of K2. They waited 10 meters below the summit to climb together, singing their national anthem. It was a triumph of unity and national pride. For Snorri, it was a personal, direct, and humiliating defeat. Not just by anyone, but by the man he'd failed with the year before. The man who now stood on top of the world's most dangerous mountain, while Snorri watched from below. But January 16th held a darker parallel. While the Nepali team celebrated their triumph on the summit, at that exact same moment, Juan Pablo Mohr's partner, his father figure, Sergi Mingote, was falling to his death. The historic summit and the season's first tragedy happened on the same day. That is K2, glory and death in the same breath. For Nepal, it was everything. For Snorri, it was personal humiliation. For Juan, it was unspeakable loss. And for everyone else at base camp, the prize was gone. The last great achievement had been claimed, but that didn't stop the climb. It only changed the reason. The unified Nepali team was gone. Now, all that remained were individual ambitions. Snorri wanted Iceland's first winter ascent. Sadpara wanted Pakistan's, and Juan to honor his fallen friend and to prove that even at the edge of death, some men still climb clean, without oxygen. That shift changed everything. Now they were chasing not history, but pride, and pride doesn't wait for perfect conditions. By early February, most climbers had gone home, but Snorri's team pushed on. On February 4th, they reached Camp 3 at 7,300 meters. It was dangerously overcrowded. 4 people crammed into a tent meant for 2. No one slept, no one rested. At midnight, 3 hours later than planned, they began their final summit push. They were already behind schedule. By 10 a.m. on February 5th, they'd been climbing for 10 hours. They'd reached the bottleneck. It is the most dangerous section of K2 for 2 reasons. First, it is a narrow, 90-meter gully of steep ice. Second, it sits directly beneath a gargantuan, overhanging tower of ice called the Great Serac. This Serac is the size of a 10-story building, and it is notoriously unstable. It can, and does, collapse at random, without any warning, burying everything and everyone below it in tons of ice. It is a game of Russian roulette. The only way to survive it is to be fast, and at 8,200 meters, after 10 hours of climbing, oxygen-starved and exhausted, no one is fast. The bottleneck sits at 8,200 meters. The summit is still hours away, and they were far too late. Their plan had been to summit by noon and return to camp in daylight, but at 10 a.m., they were still hours from the top. Then, Sajid's oxygen regulator failed. It froze. Then it began to leak. Without oxygen at that altitude, the body shuts down fast. Sajid was deteriorating. His father, Ali Sadpara, made a decision. He told his son to turn back, to use Snorri's spare oxygen and descend to Camp 3. Sajid hesitated, but his father insisted. Little did they know, it would be the last conversation they would ever have. Sajid turned back. Around noon, descending, he looked up one final time. He believes he saw 3 figures above the bottleneck, beginning the traverse toward the summit, but he can't be sure. The wind was too strong, the cold too brutal. By 4 p.m., he stumbled into Camp 3 alone, frostbitten and exhausted. That night, around 11 o'clock, he stepped outside and searched the mountain for descending headlamps. By then, they should have returned, but there was nothing, just darkness, swallowed by the cold wind. They never came back. Sajid Sadpara made it back to base camp, confirming what everyone feared. The other 3 had never returned. A massive search and rescue operation began immediately. The next morning, Pakistan launched the largest rescue effort in mountaineering history. Army helicopters pushed beyond their service limits, reaching 7,800 meters, higher than any rescue had ever gone. When weather grounded them, the military sent an F-16 fighter jet equipped with high-resolution cameras to scan the upper mountain. Teams in Pakistan, Iceland, and Chile worked together from a virtual base camp, analyzing every photo, every possible route. For 13 days, they searched, but found nothing. On February 18th, the families made the announcement. Ali Sadpara, John Snorri, and Juan Pablo Mohr were presumed dead. But the mystery wasn't over. Did they summit? Did they reach the top before they died? There were no photos, no GPS data. Snorri's tracker had failed. Their radios, cheap, low-frequency models better suited for construction sites than mountains, had gone silent. Sajid believed they made it. Others weren't so sure. If they reached the bottleneck at noon, the summit was still hours away. They would have been descending in total darkness, and in that cold, that wind, survival was nearly impossible. Months later, when the snow began to melt, the mountain finally gave back its dead. Their bodies told the story that no one else could. On July 26, 2021, during the summer climbing season, a Sherpa team who were fixing ropes for their clients discovered the bodies of the 3 missing climbers. They weren't found together, proof that they hadn't died in a single accident, but one by one on the way down. John Snorri was found highest, a good distance above the bottleneck. Ali Sadpara lay slightly lower, still above it, and Juan Pablo Mohr, much farther down, near Camp 4, around 8,000 meters. All 3 were still clipped to the fixed rope. That single detail told investigators everything. They hadn't been swept away by a falling ice tower or thrown off a snapped rope. This wasn't a sudden disaster. It was slower, a brutal, invisible fight against exhaustion, hypothermia, freezing temperatures, and the thin, suffocating air of the death zone. And their locations almost certainly answered the central question. John Snorri and Ali Sadpara were found high above the bottleneck on the route of descent. All evidence suggests they had made it. They had reached the summit, likely in total darkness, and had begun their impossible journey down. One by one, the mountain claimed them. Juan had made it the farthest. He'd passed the bottleneck, descending toward Camp 4. But Camp 4 was empty. Everyone else had gone. Even if he'd reached it, there would have been no tent, no warmth, no help waiting in the dark. They achieved what they came for, but paid with their lives. Later, Sajid was called up the mountain to identify his father's body. With the help of other climbers, he moved his father away from the main route and buried him in the snow near Camp 4, honoring his memory according to Islamic tradition, just as his family wished. Snorri's family requested the same. Their bodies remain on K2. Sajid was fortunate his oxygen supply failed. Without it, he likely would have shared the same fate. In the death zone, what seems like misfortune can sometimes be a cruel form of mercy. So what exactly went wrong? They were last seen at the bottleneck, 8,200 meters, at 10 a.m. Hours of brutal climbing still lay between them and the summit, but they pressed on. It was the fatal choice, too late in the day, far behind schedule, and with their bodies and minds already drained, they guaranteed a descent in total darkness, in worsening weather, with no margin for error. This was summit fever in its deadliest form. Snorri's obsession with redemption, Sadpara's drive for national pride, Juan's pursuit of purity, all of it pushed them past reason. But the mountain does not forgive miscalculations. It waited patiently and took its toll. In Pakistan, Ali Sadpara's death was met with an outpouring of grief. He was declared a national hero. Politicians, celebrities, and ordinary citizens mourned him. He dreamed of creating a new generation of Pakistani climbers, of building a mountain tourism industry like Nepal's. He'd wanted to fly his country's flag on every high peak. In the end, he became a symbol of ambition, sacrifice, and the cost of chasing glory. Iceland mourned John Snorri. Chile mourned Juan Pablo Mohr. But the most enduring legacy belongs to the one who survived. At the press conference announcing his father's death, Sajid Sadpara, 21 years old and grieving, made a vow. "I will carry on his dreams and mission," he said. "I will continue to walk in his footsteps." And he has. Sajid is now on a quest to summit all 14 8,000-meter peaks without supplemental oxygen, honoring his father's legacy by finishing what he started. Since that day, Sajid Sadpara has lived his vow. In the years that followed, he's climbed with relentless determination, summiting 9 of the world's 14 8,000-meter peaks, all without supplemental oxygen. From K2 to Everest, from Nanga Parbat to Annapurna, he's carried his father's dream higher with every step. He's made history again and again, the first Pakistani to climb Annapurna, Everest, and Manaslu without oxygen. But what defines him most isn't just the records, it's the restraint, the wisdom to turn back when the mountain says no. 4 years after tragedy, Sajid has become everything his father hoped he'd be, not just a climber chasing summits, but a leader carrying forward a legacy. 9 peaks down, 5 to go. The vow he made is being kept.